My mom shocked me at dinner. I took your college fund to pay for your sister's wedding. Don't be selfish, it's family. I just smiled. 2 hours later, my grandpa asked casually, So, how's that $21,000 trust one left for you? My mom's fork froze midair. I looked at him, leaned in, and whispered 4 words. 5 minutes later, he was on the phone. 30 minutes later, tires crunched in the driveway. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said them. Calm, entitled, like it was the most natural thing in the world, like she hadn't just stolen from me and announced it at my birthday dinner like it was some kind of gift. What made it worse was the way she walked around the house like she owned it, like it wasn't my place, like I was the guest. They had never lived here. Not for a single day. This house was my grandfather's, and a year ago, he signed it over to me for reasons I still don't fully understand. Said I'd earned it, whatever that meant. My parents and siblings didn't take that well, but they played nice when they needed something, which was often. And now here she was, my mom, using my kitchen like she belonged in it, opening drawers like she forgot she never paid for a single spoon in the place. She even brought her own cheap decorations for my birthday dinner. Plastic balloons, streamers, a paper crown. She tried to make it look festive, but it felt like an invasion. Then she dropped the bomb like it was nothing. We were halfway through the steak when she smiled across the table and said it. I used your college fund to help with Bethy's wedding. I knew you wouldn't mind. Family comes first. I thought I misheard her. I asked what college fund she was talking about. She looked at me like I was the crazy one. The one you've been sitting on. That $21,000 Grandpa left you last year? I blinked. I told her I didn't even know about that. I said it wasn't mine. I never touched it. And that even if I had, she should have asked me. She waved me off. You didn't even plan on going to college next year. We're helping your sister. Don't be selfish. Selfish? She took $21,000 without asking and handed it over to Bethany for a wedding she can't afford, and I'm the selfish one. I looked at my dad. He said nothing, just kept chewing like this was business as usual. Bethany, of course, didn't even flinch. Her phone lit up next to her plate. She was scrolling Instagram, probably liking her own engagement photos. I looked around my own dining room and felt like a stranger. They all acted like this was normal. Like I was supposed to nod and say thank you. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table. I didn't storm out. I just smiled. That smile must have thrown them off because they stopped talking. My mom tried to change the subject. Bethany rolled her eyes and muttered something about me being dramatic. That was when the front door opened. Grandpa Carl and Grandma Linda had perfect timing. He walked in like a retired general. Calm. Slow, but you could feel the tension shift in the room. My grandma followed, quiet and sharp-eyed, taking everything in. They took off their coats. Grandpa patted me on the shoulder and handed me a wrapped box. Then, like it was the most casual thing in the world, he asked from across the table, So, how's that $21,000 trust? One left you. Still sitting on it? Or you finally decided what to do with it? Mimam. Froze. Her fork literally stopped midair. My dad cleared his throat. Bethany put her phone down. I looked at him. Then, I leaned in and whispered, What? 21 grand? You could hear a pin drop. 5 minutes later, Grandpa was on the phone. 30 minutes later, I watched 2 squad cars roll up the driveway. I didn't say a word. I just sat back in my chair and waited. When the squad cars pulled up, it felt like the whole house held its breath. Nobody moved at first. My mom stood there stiffly with her hands still clutching her fork, as if maybe if she stayed frozen long enough, it would all go away. My dad kept glancing at Grandpa Carl like he was trying to figure out whether this was real or just some kind of sick bluff. But it was very real. The officers walked right in. Grandpa must have told them they had permission. One was holding a clipboard. The other had a hand resting lightly near his belt. Not tense, just aware. My mom launched into damage control immediately. She started talking way too fast. Said there was a family misunderstanding, that it was just some money used for a necessary expense. Said it had been moved with good intentions. The officer didn't even blink. He looked at her, then at Grandpa. Grandpa calmly handed him a folder he'd been holding since he arrived. Not rushed, not dramatic, just matter of fact. The officer flipped through the papers. Legal documents, bank statements, account signatures. Then he looked up and asked one simple question. "Ma'am, did you authorize a transfer from this account under Sally Woodmore's name?" She hesitated for less than a second, and that was enough. She tried to twist it, said it was her child's money, and therefore technically a family asset, that she and my dad were just trying to keep things within the family, that I wasn't using it anyway. That's when Grandpa cut her off completely. That trust account was created under Sally's name with funds from me. His parents were never granted access. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's unauthorized withdrawal. If he presses charges, you're looking at fraud. Everyone went dead quiet. Even Bethany. Then, right on cue, she jumped in, acting like the victim, like she always does. "Oh my God, this is ridiculous. It's not like he earned that money. He just got lucky Grandpa gave it to him." That was when Grandma finally spoke. She looked at Bethany, didn't even raise her voice. "And you're planning a wedding with a borrowed dress, a maxed out credit card, and now stolen money. Maybe it's time you start learning what responsibility looks like." Bethany didn't say a word after that. The police didn't arrest anyone on the spot, but one of them explained the process. If the funds weren't returned immediately, they could open a full investigation. My mom went pale. My dad tried to ask something about repayment plans, but the officer was already done talking. They handed Grandpa the folder back and left with a promise that paperwork would follow. When the door closed, my mom turned to me like this was my fault. "You really let it go that far?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Grandpa stepped in front of me and said it loud and clear. "You two are no longer welcome in this house. Hand over the keys." You'd think they'd argue, but they knew better. The house was mine now, and Grandpa had made it official the day he signed it over. They weren't on any deed, weren't on any lease. My dad muttered something under his breath and fished the spare key out of his coat. My mom followed. Bethany didn't say goodbye, just grabbed her phone, her purse, and stormed out like a toddler who didn't get her ice cream. They left without looking back, and for the first time in a long time, the house felt quiet, not empty, peaceful. But Grandpa wasn't done, not even close. The next morning, I woke up to an email from the family accountant, a guy I had never even spoken to before. The email said Grandpa was freezing all non-essential disbursements from the family trust, which meant my parents cut off. He also included a note that said, "You'll have a new financial advisor assigned this week only for you." It was starting. My grandfather was about to make it very clear to everyone what happens when you steal from your own blood, then lie about it. And something told me that was just the beginning. The house felt empty, but not in a bad way. It was the kind of empty that felt clean, like fresh air after you've taken the trash out. I walked from room to room, still not used to the silence. No one barging in. No passive-aggressive questions about my life. No fake affection from people who saw me as a walking bank account. But I knew it wasn't over. Not really. It had only been 2 days since the dinner, since the police walked out, and my family left with their tails between their legs. Grandpa hadn't said much since then, but I could feel something was coming. He wasn't the type to just let people off the hook. That's when I found the letter. It was in the hallway drawer, buried under a tangle of dead pens, broken chargers, and junk mail from last year. My name was on the envelope in bold, neat handwriting. No postage, just left there. Inside was a 2-page letter. No greeting, no fluff, just this. "If you found this on your own, you're smarter than I thought. And I already thought you were the smartest in this family." The rest of it read, like a warning and a challenge. He told me he'd been planning this for a long time. Said he'd known since I was a kid that the others, my parents, Bethany, would eventually try to get their hands on anything they could. It wasn't just about greed. It was entitlement. They believed they deserved it just for existing. He called it a family disease. Then came the part that made me sit down. The trust was just the surface. That money was a test. What's buried deeper is yours too, but only if you prove you're nothing like them. I sat there holding the letter for a long time, trying to process what he meant. Then I noticed the postscript. Check under the desk. Bottom drawer, you'll know what to do. I practically ran to Grandpa's old office. The desk had been untouched for months. I pulled out the bottom drawer and felt under the wood. Something was taped there. A small black flash drive. No label, no hint. I plugged it into my laptop. Password protected. I texted Grandpa one line. Found it. What's next? 2 minutes later, he replied, dinner. 7 p.m. No one else. When I got to his house, he was already waiting at the kitchen table with his laptop open and a bottle of scotch sitting beside it. I sat down. He didn't waste time. That flash drive has everything. Audio, records, even your mother's voice asking for the money before you turned 18. I stared at him. He nodded toward his laptop. I made a copy. Want to hear something? He opened a folder labeled 2006. There it was. A recording. My mom's voice, drunk and angry, ranting at someone. I couldn't tell who. He always liked that kid more. I'm his daughter and he's just a brat who got lucky being born at the right time. Carlos me. That house should have been mine. She said more. A lot more. Things I'll never be able to unhear. Then Grandpa paused the recording and looked at me. That money was never about college. That was just what they'd expect. There's more. A lot more. Real estate, stock options, private accounts, a cabin in Vermont, all in your name if you want it. I was still stuck on the fact that my mom had been scheming since I was a child. All that fake warmth, all those hugs and birthday cards, with no cash, just guilt. It had all been part of a plan. Then, Grandpa hit me with something I didn't expect. If you want the rest, we're going to court. Civil and criminal, fraud, theft, possibly perjury. You press charges, we freeze them out completely. But once you start, you don't get to pull back. You ready for that? I looked at him. He wasn't bluffing. He'd already set everything in motion. I was just the last piece. There was a long silence. I didn't say yes. I didn't have to. I picked up the flash drive, slipped it in my pocket, and nodded once. Grandpa poured himself a drink, then poured one for me. All right, he said. Then let's ruin their month. By the time I woke up the next morning, it had already begun. 6 missed calls. 3 from my mom, 1 from my dad, 2 from Bethany, and then a wall of texts from her, starting with, "You're being a child," and spiraling into a full-on meltdown within 5 screens. She said I was ruining her life, that I was vindictive. And my favorite line of all, "You have no idea what you've just started." But I did. I knew exactly what I'd started, and they were finally starting to realize it too. That afternoon, Grandpa and I met with his lawyer, Mr. Lawson, in a quiet office building across town. The guy looked like he walked out of a courtroom drama. Pinstriped suit, expensive watch, voice that didn't waste words. He barely acknowledged me when I walked in, but he didn't need to. The documents on the table said, "Enough." Lawson laid out the next steps like it was a chess game, and every move was already 3 ahead. Civil suit. Fraud and misappropriation of protected funds. Police report. Official theft investigation. Now elevated to felony because of the amount. Emergency injunction freezing any bank account connected to the stolen trust money. And then came the twist I didn't expect. "The wedding is being halted," Lawson said. I blinked. "You can actually stop it? If any of the deposits, venue, catering, dress came from the trust, then yes. Until the court determines ownership, they're frozen assets." That hit me harder than I thought it would. Not because I wanted the wedding to go on, but because I realized this wasn't just payback anymore. This was real. Public. Permanent. Bethany was going to lose everything. And part of me still felt weirdly guilty, even after everything they'd done. That feeling didn't last long. 2 hours later, someone knocked on the door. It was Mark, Bethy's fiancé. Beige polo shirt, panicked eyes, and that smug tech bro energy deflated like a balloon. I didn't say anything, just opened the door and waited. He launched into it, said Bethany was a wreck, that the venue had just called to say their payment had bounced, said the florist dropped them. The DJ, too. He asked if I was serious, if I really had gone behind everyone's back and torched the whole thing. But then he said something that stuck with me. Your mom told me your grandpa offered to pay for everything, said the money was tied up in some account with your name on it, and you were just being stubborn. She said we'd just go around you and fix it later. So there it was. They'd been planning this for months. Lying to him. Lying to each other. Using me as a scapegoat in advance, just in case anything went wrong. I didn't respond. I didn't owe him anything. I just told him to talk to my grandfather's lawyer and closed the door. That night, Grandpa showed up unannounced, with a wooden box under his arm. Said he wanted to show me something. Inside were old family photos. My mom as a kid. My uncle I barely remembered. Pictures of me when I was a baby, back when we all still fit in one room without it turning into a war zone. This family used to mean something, he said. But it doesn't anymore. Not to them. Then he handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a revised copy of his will. Every single asset. His savings. His estate. His land up in Vermont. And every remaining portion of the family trust now listed me as the sole beneficiary. Not contingent. Final. And then he looked me in the eye and said, I told you there was more coming. That's when he smiled, reached into his coat, and dropped one more piece on the table. A printed copy of a police report. My mom's car, the one she drove like it was part of her personality with the custom plates and the stupid Hashone sticker, was never actually hers. It was under Grandpa's name. He'd let her use it because at the time, he still believed in second chances. Now he just reported it stolen. I stared at the paper, trying to picture the scene at their house. You serious? He nodded. They'll be towing it by tonight. Not even 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Bethany again. What the hell did you do? Mom's outside screaming. The CR is gone. There's a tow truck in the driveway. You went too far. I didn't reply. I walked to the window and looked out at the quiet street. At the yard I used to mow, while dreaming of living somewhere else. Now this was mine. All of it. But I had a feeling we weren't even close to the final round yet. The day after the car got towed felt like the eye of the storm. No calls, no texts, no yelling outside the house. Just silence. Too quiet. Like everyone was regrouping, figuring out what to do next. But I knew better than to think they were done. People like my mom don't just admit defeat. They wait for a crack in the wall. That crack came exactly 46 hours later. It was Thursday afternoon. I had just come back from a meeting with the financial advisor Grandpa set me up with. Some quiet woman named Carla who didn't smile once but knew everything about asset protection. I was halfway through a leftover sandwich when I heard the knock on the front door. I opened it and almost laughed. It was Bethany, standing there like she hadn't just spent the last few days calling me names over text. Her hair was a mess. She wasn't wearing makeup, which was a first, and she looked like she hadn't slept in at least 2 nights. She asked if we could talk. I didn't say anything, just stepped aside. She walked in slowly, glancing around like she expected to find the house full of traps. We sat in the living room. She didn't waste time. Mom's not doing well. I stayed quiet. She's been crying for 2 days straight. Dad doesn't know what to do. They're saying Grandpa's going senile and you're being manipulated. I tilted my head. That was the story now. Not that I was selfish. Not that I was jealous. But that Grandpa had lost his mind, and I was too weak to notice. Then she tried something I didn't expect. She apologized. Not a full, real apology. Not for what they did, but for how it all went down. Said it was messy. Said maybe they should have talked to me first. Said she still loved me, and I was still her sibling, and we could fix this as a family. I let her talk. Then she pulled out a manila folder from her bag and placed it on the coffee table. Inside were signed papers. An offer. If you drop the suit, we'll transfer the money back. All of it. I'll cancel the wedding. We just want things to go back to normal. I looked at her for a long time. Then I opened the folder. The signature on the final page wasn't hers. It was mine. Forged. They were trying to get me to sign a settlement they'd already filled out, using my forged signature as leverage. I didn't say anything. I stood up, walked into Grandpa's office, took a photo of the page, then came back. "You can leave now," I said. She tried to protest. Said I didn't understand that I was throwing away our relationship. But I didn't flinch. She left 5 minutes later, slammed the door on her way out. That night, I showed the papers to Grandpa. He stared at them, nodded once, then made a call. Within the hour, Lawson had emailed me a revised version of the suit, with forgery now included as a separate charge. It wasn't just financial anymore. It was criminal, and it was escalating fast. But the real shock didn't come until the next morning. I was drinking coffee in the kitchen when Grandpa walked in, set his phone down, and said, "Well, it started. What has the foreclosure?" I stared at him. He explained calmly that years ago, he co-signed on a second mortgage for my parents when they were trying to flip a property they never actually fixed. It had been sitting vacant for years. He'd been paying the interest just to keep them afloat. But not anymore. He pulled his name, stopped the payments, and notified the bank. Within 60 days, their credit would crash, the property would be taken, and they'd be on the hook for every cent. "But that's not the part they're going to care about," he added. I looked up. "They don't know yet." He smiled. "They'll find out at the family barbecue next Saturday. You're invited, by the way." It was going to be hosted by my aunt, the only sibling of my mom's who never asked for anything, and everyone was going to be there. Uncles, cousins, old friends. They were going to learn all at once who had what and who lost everything. And I'd be standing there, with the truth in my pocket and a front row seat to their downfall. The day of the barbecue felt like walking into a movie where you already know the ending, but you still buy the popcorn just to enjoy the chaos. It was held at my Aunt Melanie's place, about 40 minutes outside the city. Big yard, tables covered in red checkered cloth, 2 grills going. The whole family showed up like it was any other Saturday, laughing, hugging, catching up, like nobody had been clawing each other apart behind the scenes. Bethany was there acting like nothing happened. She was glued to Mark, clinging to his arm like he might vanish if she let go. My parents arrived late, of course. My mom had sunglasses on and held her wine like it was a lifeline. My dad hovered close behind her, trying to look casual and failing. I stayed by the edge, talking to my cousins, watching everything unfold. Then Grandpa arrived. He didn't come quietly. He parked his old truck on the lawn like it was a throne on wheels, stepped out in his classic leather jacket at 76 years old, and headed straight for the main table with a box tucked under his arm. He called for attention just like that. No microphone. Just his voice. It cut through the chatter like a knife. "Got something to share before we dig into the ribs." Everyone turned. A few raised eyebrows. A few nervous laughs. Then he pulled a stack of papers out of the box and began handing them out. I already knew what was in them. Statements, legal notices, documentation of everything. My trust, the forgery, the frozen wedding funds, the car theft report, the lawsuit filings, and the foreclosure documents for the house my parents were still living in. Barely. My mom went pale the second she read the first line. My dad took his copy, flipped through it, then walked away like maybe distance could undo reality. Bethany didn't even open hers. She just crumpled the paper in her hand and stared at me. I didn't look away. The silence stretched for a full minute, and then Grandpa, still calm as ever, said, "This family has forgotten what accountability looks like." Sally hasn't. He looked right at me. "She's the only one who didn't ask for anything. That's why she gets everything." Then he turned to the rest of them and said something I'll never forget. "Next time you decide to steal from your own blood, make sure they're not the one holding the receipts." He turned, walked back to his truck, and drove off like he just dropped off a delivery. The party didn't recover after that. People left in waves. Conversations got weird and forced. Nobody looked at me for long. Later that evening, I stayed behind to help Aunt Melanie clean up. She handed me a bag of leftovers and said, "About time someone called them out." By the time I got home, my phone was full again. Voicemails, texts, missed calls. My mom begging for another chance. My dad asking if there was any way to fix this. Bethany sent one last message. "Congratulations. Hope it was worth it." I didn't reply. I just turned off my phone, sat on the porch of my house, and watched the sun go down over the yard they used to walk through like they owned it. It was quiet again, and this time, it felt permanent.